Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that could literally flip the script on how you view the people closest to you. We're talking about how unity builds stronger teams. If you've ever found yourself just pulling your hair out because your partner loads the dishwasher completely wrong, or maybe a coworker tackles a project in a way that just drives you absolutely crazy, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to look at how to reframe those annoying, everyday interpersonal differences. Instead of seeing them as sources of friction, we're going to start seeing them as the essential foundational raw materials you actually need for building a stronger, way more resilient team.
So, moving right into Section 1, Unity is not uniformity and overcoming differences.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because to build a truly strong team, we first have to confront a pretty massive misconception. We often tend to think that erasing our differences is what makes us stronger. That's uniformity over on the left. It basically demands that we think exactly alike, react exactly alike, and share the exact same strengths. But true unity, which you see on the right, is a completely different ballgame. Unity doesn't erase differences, it actually leverages them. As our source material beautifully describes it, unity is the dynamic work of weaving diverse, totally unique threads into a strong, beautiful bond of peace. It's all about bringing different elements together to create something so much stronger than any single thread could ever hope to be on its own.
So here is the absolute crucial point for us today. Your differences, your unique personality, your specific background, the way you see the world, they are not mistakes that need to be fixed or eradicated. Just think about that for a second. How often do we look at a partner or a teammate and just think, man, if they could just see this exactly the way I do, everything would be perfect. But the sorcery challenges us here with this powerful metaphor. Those differences are the raw materials specifically designed for covenant relationships. They're there so that when you combine them, you actually form a stronger, much more complete whole. Your calling isn't to just wipe out these differences, but to figure out how to manage them effectively.
And that brings us to Section 2, 3 Pillars of Peace, and the tools for covenant relationships.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that if we aren't supposed to erase our differences, how on earth are we supposed to manage them without, completely driving each other crazy? Well, we need the right tools. Our foundational team-building blueprint here actually comes from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. It says, "I therefore urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love." This ancient piece of wisdom is basically the ultimate guide to team unity. It highlights 3 very specific tools for us: humility, gentleness, and patience. So let's actually break down exactly what each of these looks like in real everyday practice.
All right, tool number 1 is humility. And in this specific context, humility means choosing to value the relationship over simply being right. Look, we all know it is so easy to get caught up in winning the argument, right? We want to prove our point, we want to validate our own perspective. But building a stronger team requires this conscious and sometimes incredibly difficult decision to prioritize the overall health of the relationship way above our own ego. It's basically stopping yourself in the heat of the moment and asking, do I want to win this fight or do I want to protect this team?
Which leads us to tool number 2, gentleness. This one is all about handling each other's hearts with genuine, tender care. Think about it. When you bring 2 totally different people together with different backgrounds and different triggers, there are absolutely going to be vulnerabilities. Gentleness is just the intentional, careful way we navigate those differences. It means we make a point not to use our partner's weaknesses against them. We recognize, hey, they are a totally different person, and we decide to approach their unique inner world with deep respect and care. And then we have tool number 3, which is patience. Because let's be real, weaving a strong team out of diverse threads does not just happen overnight. Patience means we actively give each other the room and the time we need to grow together. It's a deliberate choice to extend grace when the other person doesn't get it right immediately. It's just recognizing that blending 2 lives, blending 2 entirely different perspectives, it just takes an incredible amount of time.
So how does this actually play out in everyday reality? Well, take a look at this stark contrast here. On the left, we've got friction. The source warns us that the enemy loves to use our differences to create friction, to agitate us, to pull us apart, and basically try to convince us that we are just too incompatible to make it work. But on the right side, we see depth. The Spirit uses those exact same differences to create profound relational depth. Walking in unity, it isn't some one-and-done event. It is an active, daily choice to lead with that humility, that gentleness, and that patience we just talked about. That is exactly how you maintain the fundamental unity that you've already been given.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, building your team's muscles. Let's get into some practical, everyday applications. Because knowing all this conceptually is great,
but we really need to put it into action if we want to see how unity actually builds stronger teams. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where we draw these practical team-building exercises from. Our source material lays out some highly actionable steps for both singles and couples to start practicing overcoming those differences with grace. So let's zoom in on a couple of these practices right now.
First up, if you're single, your training ground is your friendships. The Singles Practice challenges you to find a mildly irritating difference in a friendship this week. You know exactly what I'm talking about, that one friend who is literally always 10 minutes late, or maybe the one who overanalyzes every tiny detail when you just want the big picture. Instead of getting annoyed this time, practice bearing with them. Just pause and ask yourself, what can I actually learn from their perspective? By doing this, you are actively building up the empathy and patience muscles that you are absolutely going to need for future covenant relationships.
Now, for those of you in a relationship, we have the couple subtle. The next time you find yourselves facing a conflict, stop and try to identify if it's difference-driven, meaning are you guys fighting just because you naturally approach things in totally different ways? If you are, call a humility huddle. Each of you takes a turn sharing this sentence. One way my difference can bless our team is, by doing this, you're actively reframing what annoys you into an actual asset. Then, you wrap it up by thanking God for how your partner's difference actually complements your own weaknesses. I promise you, it entirely changes the atmosphere of a disagreement.
Let's wrap things up with Section 4, Walking Worthy Together and Weaving an Unbreakable Bond.
As we start to really adopt these practices, we fundamentally change the narrative of our relationships. We stop seeing ourselves as mismatched, and we start seeing ourselves as perfectly paired for growth. Just listen to the sharp contrast in this week's declaration from the source material. We choose humility over pride. We choose gentleness over force. And we choose patience over frustration. And it concludes so beautifully saying, our differences are the threads God uses to weave an unbreakable bond of peace. That is the ultimate goal here, right? We are taking the very things that could easily tear us apart, and instead, we're using them to weave a bond of peace that just cannot be broken. So I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge today. Think about it. What is one difference between you and your partner, or maybe a really close friend, that you have actually learned to appreciate as a strength? I encourage you to embrace those raw materials. Because if unity isn't just about being exactly the same, what incredible strengths might your team be missing out on right now, just because they look a little different than yours? Think on that. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and I will see you next time.